A thread by Carlos Osuida for Wise Gray Owl 99. You asked me what I think of this article. From pjmedia.com, no, they're not stupid. Why leftists destroyed a statue of an elk in Portland. From the article, quote, what the rioters want to do is the very definition of terrorism, to strike fear into the hearts of a population so that its entire existence is consumed by it, and it becomes paralyzed, unable to act, even in its own defense. End quote. Okay, sure, that's what they want, but nobody's terrorized. The only people terrorized are the ones on social media. This is starting to freak me out. These are calls for retaliatory massacres. What we're seeing is level-headed Americans not doing what the people behind the terrorists want. The idiots burning elk statues are just following orders. What the people controlling them want is for us to grab our shooting irons and mow down the idiots. That is what will get Biden elected. But all these fearful fearmongers on social media think that keeping your powder dry is a sign of weakness. This is the craziest damn thing. Everybody is criticizing us, except for me. I'm praising the hell out of us. Do you have any idea what we've survived? A pandemic, a total economic shutdown, nationwide terrorism, one of our two major parties becoming traitors. There's one reason why we're standing firm. Donald Trump. He and his team are calm. So we're calm. Oh, God. I didn't even look to see who wrote the article. Robert Spencer of Jihad Watch. I shouldn't even be wasting my time. Whatever happened to the Islamic takeover of the country? So now we've moved on to the Antifa BLM takeover of the country. They couldn't run 7 city blocks, but by gum, they're going to take over the country. I was never a fan of Spencer because he's an alarmist who isn't acting in good faith. Let's say there wasn't a stealth reformation of Islam. There was, but let's say it never happened. The most heavily armed Islamist terrorist organization in history was the Islamic State. It's been wiped out as a regional threat. Why? Because you can't fight modern wars with a Bronze Age mindset. Guess what they did with their most experienced fighters? Made them into suicide shock troops. From NewYorkPost.com, ISIS uses suicidal shock troops atrocities to gain battlefield edge. How many times could each of these men be used? Once, and then a decade's worth of combat experience was gone. One of the many reasons the Nazis lost was that they didn't rotate their combat troops home. That's why so few survived the war. We, on the other hand, set time limits for missions for our men, and after a tour of duty, they came home to instruct fresh recruits. The experience was passed on from veteran to replacement. The Islamic State killed all their own best men. Suicide car and truck bombs lost their ability to terrorize. Even suicide vests became ineffective as secret countermeasures were developed. When was the last time you heard of a massive suicide bombing that killed 100 people? Tim Pool and Robert Spencer and all the other fearmongers are speaking as if the government doesn't exist. I know that Spencer is a bad faith actor, but I have no idea what Tim believes. I think he has a lot of trouble changing his mind. But let's use an analogy. An explosion is a rapid release of energy. What does the damage is blast effect and fragmentation. An explosion is called a detonation. A rapid burning of explosive material is deflagration. Spencer and Tim see no difference between detonation and deflagration. If you stand next to a suicide bomber and his vest detonates, you disintegrate. If you stand next to a suicide bomber and a Gulf Arab commando uses a pyrophoric slug flamethrower to deflagrate the vest, you just get the smell of frying bacon. I have videos of Islamic State terrorists whose suicide vests were detonated with these new flamethrowers. They must be conversions of rifles because they are as accurate as rifles. The technology exists to use blank cartridges to fire pyrophoric slugs with a rifle. The conversion mechanism was actually patented in 1918, so I made a mock-up of what the flamethrower looks like. Of course, the modern conversion mechanism would be much smaller. The fuel tanks are cloth, so that the flame gunner is silent. The gas from each blank cartridge powers the flame-throwing mechanism, which sucks a pyrophoric slug from the fuel tanks. Pyrophoric material ignites when exposed to atmospheric air. Some mixtures burn thousands of times hotter than napalm. The videos show terrorists burned to charcoal between their thighs and their chins, but their pant legs and hair are totally intact. When I say charcoal, I mean even the bones are black and crumbling. Extremely eerie sight, especially since their faces and hair are unharmed. The pyrophoric slug flamethrower was patented in 1969, but there was no means to make the idea into a production model. Obviously, the Gulf Arabs have. A lot of the fighting in Iraq and Syria was trench warfare, so I knew that the flamethrowers would be in use. The way they stopped car bombs was to shoot out the bullet-resistant glass in front with the driver in front of the driver using guided 50 caliber bullets, and then pyrophoric slugs were pouring in, probably with a converted machine gun. The entire interiors of the truck bombs were incinerated. Nothing left of the driver except a pair of boots. What we're seeing now is deflagration, a slower release of energy that won't hurt us. The leftist terrorists think they're accomplishing something, but all they're doing is ensuring re-election for Trump. Tim Pool almost certainly won't vote for Trump anyway. He calls Trump a potty mouth, which is always embarrassing. Better to hand the country to Antifa and then vote for a potty mouth, right? Tim stood on his principles, by Godfrey. The lack of violent pushback is good. It shows we're not afraid. We're waiting. Sure, I get cranky, but I know now that we'll do the right thing in November. People have shown their true colors. We're as tough as our parents and grandparents. Remember, Spencer and Tim are calling for violent retaliation to Antifa and BLM. That's exactly what we can't do, and we won't. We're smart, not afraid.